Has the Los Angeles Police Department just confirmed that Celeste Rivas Hernandez wasn't killed? Their latest statement has all of us guessing at what potential criminal liability anyone may face here after her body was found in a car registered to singer David. We are bringing back on Steve Fischer, the private investigator who is looking into aspects of this case on the ground in Los Angeles. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. As you're watching this, have you ever wondered how we're able to share so many clips from all of these stories so quickly? I'll give you a secret if you're in the content creation game. It's called Opus Clip. This is an all-in-one AI editor that makes it a breeze to cut, create, and upload videos across any platform. Through AI, Opus Clip, it generates B-roll, it reframes footage, and it even cleans up audio. It is so easy to use. You just visit opus.pro/sidebar, you sign up, you upload, and in minutes you will have perfectly edited clips ready to go for TikTok, Shorts, Reels. Opus is your one-stop shop. And having a tool like Opus Clip means our producers can get you viral courtroom updates instantly. At Sidebar, we want listeners to share their ideas too, and this is the most powerful tool there is to help you edit like a pro. Go to opus.pro/sidebar to create your videos today. What do we make of this new update in the David case? As we continue to cover the investigation into the death of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez, whose body was found in a Tesla that was registered to the singer out in LA back in September, and there have been no arrests, no one, including David, has been named a suspect or person of interest. What is happening right now? Because the LAPD has confirmed with KTLA that its prior news release, quote, stands on its own. What does that mean? Well, if you go back to that prior news release, essentially the message being sent is there is currently no crime other than concealment of a body that may have occurred. There is no case being sent over to the LA County District Attorney's Office for potential review or potential prosecution. And one of the reasons that announcement has been made was because the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner has not yet determined a manner or cause of Celeste's death. But should I say, as of now, right? Could this change? Does that mean they have no evidence right now that someone actually killed Celeste, caused her death, that there's no homicide charges on the table right now? Was it accidental? Someone freaked out, tried to dispose or conceal her body afterwards? Or is this basically a statement they're not going to find any evidence that someone killed her, right? I want to get into what this means and what may be going on behind the scenes with someone who is on the ground in LA, someone who is investigating what may have happened to Celeste. I'm talking about Steve Fischer, a missing persons private investigator who is hired by the owner of the property that David was staying at in LA. Now remember, this property was nearby where that Tesla was found. And as you may recall, the owner wants some more information about what role his house, his property, may have played in this, if any. And you may also remember, if you've been following us here on Sidebar, that we have interviewed Steve before. And when it came to what may have been found at that house, the house that David moved out of, that was searched by authorities, here's what Steve said to us on a previous episode.
But I will say this, there are some things that, and I'm talking physical evidence that was at that house that is, there could have been greater plans as far as getting rid of her. And it's scary, sadistic stuff. And that's why we're trying to learn more about that. I wish I could say more, but for obvious reasons I can't. But it doesn't have to do with how she died, but maybe how they were planning on ultimately getting rid of her, and how maybe that Tesla was just a holding spot at the time, and things just, their timing was just off as far as getting this done. But there's a few things that were just like, will blow your mind.
And Steve joins us now. Steve, good to see you again. I'm really happy to have you. I mean, you've been on the ground there. You're investigating this. Let's start here. The big news. When the LAPD confirms with KTLA that its prior news release stands on its own, does that signify to you, hey, listen, we have no evidence that Celeste Rivas Hernandez was killed, that homicide charges are not warranted here, that that's our final conclusion? Or is that saying we don't have evidence at this point?
So I think what it's saying is that they're still relying on what's going to come back from the medical examiner's office, since there's not a determination there, at least publicly. Now, are they in contact with the medical examiner? Absolutely. But listen, I don't think that's unintentional. They've been so tight-lipped. I think there has to be something to read into that. That, again, I think the purpose of the initial release was to, get everybody possibly prepared that this isn't a homicide. And now they're saying we still don't have anything that shows that it is. But there's other, listen, a crime definitely occurred. And they even say that at least concealment of the body. But there's other crimes I hope they're investigating, such as the relationship. I understand it's a tough case to make because she's not around anymore. She can't testify, but it doesn't mean because it's hard, it shouldn't be, pursued.
I'm going to talk about what potential charges could be here in a second, but just going back to this, they have to be in contact with the LA County Medical Examiner. Does that mean that right now the LA County Medical Examiner is like, I need more information. I don't have a conclusion yet. Last time you and I were speaking, you said it's possible that the LA County Medical Examiner may be releasing the cause and manner of death of Celeste soon, because you were looking at the website and it was showing that they were reviewing cases. There was a backlog and maybe Celeste is going to come up. Does it signify to you, yeah, we spoke to them. There's nothing to determine that she was killed by anyone, which could raise questions about how she died? Or is this a situation where, they again, yeah, they spoke to them. Yeah, it's possible Celeste was killed, but we're just not revealing that at this point in time.
Yeah, so the LA County Medical Examiner's Office has their own in-house investigators also. And in fact, they publicly say on the site who the investigator on the case is. So I'm sure they're working with robbery homicide. And, it may be a case that, let's say they did get a good toxicology result back, but it's not an overdose. Now it throws it back into, okay, so then you got really limited options. It's either a homicide or, if she took her own life. Then they'd really have to dig in, because if it wasn't glaringly obvious from the initial autopsy, in other words, if there's not a gunshot wound or something like that, then, they're going to have to maybe get forensic anthropologists involved that specialize in trying to make these determinations on severely decomposed bodies, which can take a while. And they might be consulting with outside pathologists to see if they got it, to get comfortable with a possible determination. But something, like you said, I've been tracking those other cases and they've come back with toxicology now. In fact, she's the only one of 6 deaths on September 8th that doesn't have a cause and manner. And so it's a little bit, it's concerning, but which way it goes is hard to tell, because they could have, needed additional testing.
Because you thought by this point we might have had a release. You thought by this point we might have more information.
If it was, I think if they got a good toxicology, let's say it came back and it was clearly an overdose of some sort, whether somebody administered that or she took it herself and it was an accident, is a different thing. The cause would be, a rough manner would be whether it was self-administered or administered by someone else. I would think that there would have been some sort of indication by now, and that could be, then initial charges could be dropped. I don't know why initial charges couldn't be dropped now, even if they have the stack on top of them, because I know that they'll probably say, well, he's cooperating. But how much, if it's been 2 months and you haven't gotten the answer yet, is he really cooperating? So, it means he's probably not. He's probably, the counsel's telling him not to. And what's the difference if he's Mirandized or not, now?
And to be clear about something, okay? If they come back and they say, listen, there's no evidence to support that Celeste was killed, right? There's no evidence to support homicide charges, manslaughter, murder, anything like that. Is that consistent with what you're seeing in your private investigation? Are you hearing or seeing something different? Would you be surprised if that's the ultimate conclusion?
I'll just be honest. We really don't know. Nobody has stepped forward, even, wanting to be anonymous off the record and said, listen, I know what happened. So it's very bizarre that there's this many people involved that have stayed this quiet for this long, especially like when they're young. And it's like they're all lawyered up, to be honest with you. And I don't know if that's because maybe he's providing counsel to all of them, but there's no leaks coming out. And that's kind of bizarre with this many people involved, younger people that kind of want to save themselves, and they're blowing their careers up. So it seems like there's something that they're trying to protect, but I don't know what it is yet.
And I just have to be clear once again, right? There's a lot of online speculation. There's a lot that we're looking into. We're looking at every report that's come out. To be clear, okay, David Anthony Burke has not been officially implicated in any crime, any wrongdoing. He's not been charged. He's not been named a suspect, not a person of interest. Obviously, his connection is through the car and these reports that he had some sort of relationship with Celeste, which I'll dive into a little bit more. But Steve, I was looking into this, right? And unless I'm wrong, if someone just moved Celeste's body, possibly under California law, that may be just a misdemeanor. There's a law that says every person who, having knowledge of an accidental death, actively conceals or attempts to conceal that death shall be guilty of a misdemeanor, punishable by imprisonment in a county jail for not more than 1 year, or by a fine of not less than $1,000 nor more than $10,000, or by both that fine and imprisonment. And for purposes of this section, to actively conceal an accidental death means any of the following: to perform an overt act that conceals the body or directly impedes the ability of authorities or family members to discover the body, to directly destroy or suppress evidence of the actual physical body of the deceased, including but not limited to bodily fluids or tissues, to destroy or suppress the actual physical instrumentality of death, right, what caused the death. And I also saw that there was this health and safety code section under California law that says a person who willfully mutilates remains known to be human without authority of law is guilty of a felony. I'm just not sure if we've seen convictions on that for something like this, given this fact pattern. But the reason people are talking about this law now is because if we are coming to the conclusion that this really may be it, am I wrong? Is that really what, we might be looking at?
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. And, I've brought this up for a while now, that you can willfully conceal and suppress evidence and destroy evidence to hide it from investigators and family and everybody else. And it's still a misdemeanor. And let's just be real about it. None of these people appear to, or in initial orbit, have a record. So they're not going to get up to a year in county jail. They're going to get probation if they're charged. So it's tremendous. Now, it shifts to a felony when you mutilate a body. Now, and of course, we've heard these reports since the beginning of her being dismembered. I do not believe that. I believe it was disinterculation, that's a natural process of the connective tissues degrading and the bones, falling apart. I don't have any evidence that she was dismembered, so I don't think that's the case.
Okay.
But if it is, then that would go to a felony. That would be a totally different thing. But you suppress this evidence. You can hide her in a trunk from investigators and destroy evidence. And it's a misdemeanor in California.
And to be clear, maybe that's what the additional testing is, to try to see what signs her body shows of being manipulated in some way or mutilated in some way. I hate to talk so cavalier about this, but From a legal point of view, this is the cold, hard facts. This is what investigations look like. Although I will tell you, if we're saying, okay, how did she die then? And I know that there's been a conversation, well, let's say for argument's sake, and this is purely speculation, if you're talking about drugs being involved, is the LAPD saying that this is not a drug-related death, or that someone wouldn't be responsible for it? Because you would think it is possible, we've seen it before, someone could be charged with an overdose. Someone could be charged with drug offenses, even in severe cases, if they provide drugs that result in an overdose. You could look at, let's say, involuntary manslaughter. Someone could be brought up on charges of distributing those drugs, providing those drugs, particularly to a minor, if they're not saying that at that point, right? I mean, that could be because there's no evidence of that, or maybe they're saying, the LAPD, we don't even want to mention drugs. We don't even want to mention drugs at this point. What do you think's going on there?
Yeah, it could be. So, listen, this is a high-profile case, and let's look at other high-profile cases that's similar to this. Mac Miller, Matthew Perry, both times people charged with providing him the drugs they overdosed on. So maybe there is a drug element to this investigation going on that we don't know about, because when they confirmed basically they're standing on that statement a couple days ago, I know that I saw a headline saying, they've confirmed that it's not a murder, not homicide. That's not what they said. They said they're just standing on their previous statement. So it got a little spun out of control, I think. And that's going to happen when this goes on 2 months, right? But maybe there's a drug investigation. Maybe they're trying to figure out how those got to her, and it's going to be a Mac Miller or Matthew Perry type of situation where they are going to go after, whoever provided them. And
without naming names, from your investigation into that house, can you say at this point whether drugs were ever found at that house or connected to that house?
So I can tell you that there was prescription narcotic medication, opiate, painkillers that were found, but they were prescribed. And so we don't know if they were ever used recreationally or not. There was some paraphernalia there, but listen, marijuana is legal in California, and it's something that you could use for that. You could also use it for illicit drugs. We don't know what they were being used for. I've seen some pictures of Celeste where she doesn't look sober. I'll just be honest with you. She looks like she's definitely not sober. And I've talked to people in Lake Elsinore that said when she came back after that time that law enforcement brought her back, that she was quote unquote strung out. And so I don't know, and I hate to say that about a minor because I don't have proof of it. I'm just telling you what I've been told. But if that's indeed the case, then hopefully there's a drug element going, investigation going on that we don't know about. And they're just being very tight-lipped. But listen, it's been a while now, you know.
No, look, a lot of people care about Celeste. They're worried. Yeah. They're thinking about what happened here. They're invested in this case, family, friends, just people who are constantly following it from the beginning. And I wanted to ask you what you learned more about Celeste so far in your investigation, because we covered this extensively, that there was, and you mentioned this, there was reporting about her running away from home, footage of her walking away on a street in Lake Elsinore, footage of her potentially fighting with people in her neighborhood, reporting particularly from TMZ that Celeste may have been in some sort of relationship with David, those around them saying that they thought she was 19. What else have you learned about Celeste Rivas Hernandez that we should know?
Well, I mean, listen, I'm 100% convinced personally that there was a relationship going on. I think, you don't have to have a tape of a sex act going on in order to prove that. But it also showed that, listen, she had a lot of freedom at a very young age. Now there's photos of her at a concert in Vegas when she was 13 years old, at a concert that he was playing at. Of course, the other stuff we've already talked about, which is her at that high school graduation and her showing up and arguing with the neighbors. These are all during the time that she's reported as a missing person. Law enforcement should have been notified. At that graduation, I don't believe that she was the only person in her family there. I think that there was several adult family members there, and there was school police officers at that graduation. I don't know why somebody didn't say, hey, by the way, this is a missing person. And, they would go the route they normally go and make sure that she's okay and find out what's going on. But none of that happened. It seemed like she just showed up like at a family event and then went back to wherever it was she was staying. And that's concerning because she wasn't in school and there wasn't these controls and that are there for a reason.
Have you tried reaching out to Celeste's family and friends? Have they been responsive at all? I mean, what can you tell us?
I reached out to two of them that I don't speak Spanish myself. So I didn't reach out directly to the mom because I heard that she only speaks Spanish, but I did reach out to two others and I have not heard back from them. But I'm not going to press it with them because I do have a limited scope in this investigation. I'm not there investigating side by side with LAPD. I'm there for the homeowner and finding out what happened in or around the house and the cars that were at the house. So I'm not going to press that, but no, I tried and I've not heard back. If they're, if they're watching this, I'd love to talk to them. I'm not. I just want to, learn, what happened.
And by the way, just going back to something you had mentioned since the first time that we spoke about this, that there was this surveillance footage, and correct me if I'm wrong, you can't identify, but you seem to know who moved that Tesla, right? Who had operated that Tesla. When we say there's no arrest here, when we are talking about the fact, yeah, there's been no arrest, no person of interest, no suspect. Again, at this point of time, because it's been some time since you and I first talked about that, are you surprised? No arrest there of that person?
Yeah, I am, because I can understand maybe a month or 6 weeks ago, because if they're saying, hey, listen, they're cooperating with us right now, there's no reason to jam them up and then have their lawyers say, listen, you went ahead and arrested, so now we're not cooperating, we're not talking. But even if they're saying that's still the case, 2 months, if they haven't told you the whole story now in 2 months, then is that cooperating? I don't believe it is. So I think there's initial charges you could start with, and they're just misdemeanor charges. So it's not like the person would what's going on with bond in California right now. I mean, the person would probably get out on their own recognizance, so.
And now I'm not saying that would change the investigation analysis, but sometimes we've seen before in cases where somebody, when they are charged, they sometimes provide more information to law enforcement. Sometimes it can lead to a further search warrant where you can get more information. So when someone is charged even with a lower level offense, that could ultimately lead to something else. But by the way, have you spoken to LAPD? Have they given you any indication what's going on?
Yeah, I've spoken to them a couple of times to give them information, but they haven't offered anything back, which I didn't expect anyways. But it's only been to give them information.
Are they concerned about your parallel investigation or not?
We haven't even had that conversation, but if I had to guess, I would say they don't like it for sure. There's never a situation where they particularly like somebody I'm very much information based. I don't believe in this totally tight to the vest type of investigation. I think that pressure really brings people forward and stuff. And that's why I think something like an arrest, because if you're a person that gets arrested for moving that vehicle, for participating in concealment of a body, and you feel like now you're the only one that's been arrested, and you feel like you're taking the hit for this when you only did one part of it, you're probably going to talk. You're in to invest and say, okay, this person also did this, and I think it's a way to bring answers out. I don't think that they love that I'm involved, but it's just, I am. And that's the way it is right now.
Before I let you go, Steve, one final point. Have you spoken to anyone in David's camp? Do you know where he is at this point?
No, I know that early on, it seemed like he was in California, because when he transferred that property in Texas, it had the notary seal was a California notary. So it appeared that when he signed those documents, he had come back to California, at least for a while. I have no idea if he's still here or where he is. And I've spoken to some people that are like one step removed from the initial players, but I haven't talked to any of the main people I would like to.
And by the way, your client, the owner of this property, how are they feeling at this point?
I mean, they want answers. I mean, I could see how it would be disturbing to decide if you want to live in that house right now or not while this is going on. Did somebody lose their life in there or not lose their life in there, especially a 14-year-old at the time? So, they want answers and they want to know what's going on. And especially since he wasn't even the person that signed the lease, and this is all, news to him.
It was David's manager, right, who was on the lease. But have they tried to, rent out the property again, or sell the property?
I know that they were doing some repairs on it, and I don't know if it's on the rental. I haven't even asked. He's never brought anything up about the financial part of it. It's just been wanting to know more from like a healthy, like spiritual type of thing, like what may have or may not have happened there.
Steve Fischer, always appreciate you taking the time to talk to us about what's going on here. Again, a lot of questions, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can follow me on X or Instagram. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.